I shall now take the privilege to introduce today's speaker. Swami Shuddhidananda is a monk of Ramakrishna Order. He joined the order at Ramakrishna Math, Pune in 1993. Initiated by Revered Swami Ranganathananji Maharaj, he took the monastic vows in 2003 after 10 years of training. He is presently the Adhyaksha of Advaita Ashram Mayavati in Uttarakhand, which is a unique center envisioned by Swami Vivekananda himself. Advaita Ashram is also one of the premier publication center of the Ramakrishna Math and Mission. During the 20 years of his life at Advaita Ashram, the Swami has been involved in the publication of several important works dealing with Vedanta, Sri Ramakrishna, and Swami Vivekananda. He has been the chief editor of a number of important books like The Message of Vivekachudamani, Western Admirers of Sri Ramakrishna and his disciples, Swami Vivekananda as the Turning Point, and Hinduism the Faith Eternal. He is also a regular speaker at different forums, including IIT Kharagpur, where he has been holding classes for students and faculty members for the last 8 years. His special area of interest is the philosophy of Vedanta and Yoga, and also Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda. It is our pleasure to have him here with us today. Therefore, without any further delay, I welcome Swami Shuddhidananda to address the gathering.
Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Surai Satchit Sukhasvarupaya Swami Netapaharini Hari Om Tat Sat Hari Om Tat Sat Hari Om Tat Sat. My dear friends and devotees assembled here, it's a great honor for me to be here this day in front of this a small but a beautiful gathering, which I'm usually used to because I too go to our Kharagpur IIT, and there also we have such a nice gathering which we have been holding for last several years. So I feel very much connected with all of you for this very reason. And I thank Vivekananda Study Circle for having accorded this invitation to me to come here and share my ideas on this a very important subject which we have been repeatedly discussing in different forums, and yet it never loses its relevance and importance. And thank you, Balaji, for giving a beautiful introduction. So I think that let me just start from where Balaji has left, because he actually has touched upon a very crucial area which none of us can overlook, and that is happiness. So actually I was supposed to talk on Swamiji's message for the youth. I may come back to that, but let me just start from I didn't come much prepared actually. I'm telling you frankly, because I was so much busy with my new engagements, I hardly found any time to think beforehand what I'm going to talk here. But yet I knew Swamiji is there. Whatever comes, he will take care of it. So I should thank Balaji for having broached a very important subject. So I start from there. This happiness. It's the very natural instinct of every creature in this creation to avoid pain and to seek pleasure or happiness. Everyone wants this. The avoidance of misery and pain, and to grab a pleasurable, or more, I should say, something which is in favor of one's experience. This is a very basic natural instinct which governs the behavior of every creature in this creation. Nobody wants to have unpleasant experiences. Everyone wants to be happy. But the problem is that very few in this creation knows exactly where happiness lies. We are constantly making experiments with happiness. We think that when we have this, we'll be happy. Just like as what Balaji just now referred to. This is a constant striving to be happy in and through grabbing things in the world. But our experiences shows that no matter what we have in this life, no matter what enjoyments which we can have in this physical plane of existence, we remain unsatisfied. Nobody can be happy. People say that if we have wealth, you can be happy. In that case, a very rational question, or rather, we can raise this objection to this assumption. I say this is an assumption that if you have wealth, you can be happy. If you can have pleasures, you can be happy. In that case, the richest countries in the world, the West, you may say, the society has to be the happiest society. But is that a fact? If you just look into the statistics, you can go into the statistics of this issue, you will find that the richest countries in the world today are the countries and societies where the instances of mental sickness is seen to be the highest. It's a fact, which actually debunks our assumption that by having wealth or becoming richer, having a very sophisticated society with the freedom to enjoy all kinds of pleasures, you are going to be happy. This is the biggest myth which has to be busted at some point of the time or the other. The earlier it happens, the better. So we need to understand that our pursuit of happiness is somehow misguided. We are believed, or we are made to believe that happiness lies in whatever we get through the sensory system. So in Bhagavad-Gita there is a very beautiful verse. I'll just touch upon that and then I'll come to Swami Vivekananda's life, from where we can get great lessons about that. In Bhagavad-Gita there is a beautiful verse which says that, in Sanskrit it is very beautiful, it says, Nasti buddhir ayuktasya nachayuktasya bhavana nachabhavayata shanti ashantasya kuta sukham. It's actually a question which Krishna places before all of us. The last three words are very important in this. Krishna says, Ashantasya kuta sukham. You know, the Sanskrit word for happiness is sukham. We all know this. Sukham. Sukham is the Sanskrit word, which is a word which is used in Hindi also. Sukham. हम सबको सुख चाहिए, किसी को दुख नहीं चाहिए, लेकिन सुख कहाँ है ये हमें पता नहीं है. This is the problem. So Krishna says, Ashantasya kuta sukham. A mind which is turbulent, a mind which is in the grip of all kinds of negative emotions, a mind which is full of hatred and a sense of violence, a mind which is full of desires, unfulfilled desires, a mind which is constantly in a state of conflict The question is, can that person be happy? It's impossible. No matter how rich that person is, no matter how much enjoyments he has at the physical plane, that mind is a mind which is ridden with perpetual misery and a state of dissatisfaction and frustration. This is exactly what happens in the rich societies, which we think that they are happy. They are not happy. So Krishna says there, 2-3 things are to be noted in this great verse of the Bhagavad-Gita. He says, Nasti buddhir ayuktasya nachayuktasya bhavana. The 2 things there. Ayukta is a very important word here. Ayukta means a person who is not controlled, a person who has not disciplined his psychophysical system. He is known as ayukta, whose sense organs are not under his control, whose mind is not under his control. Such a person is known as ayukta. He is indisciplined. He is not the master of his body and the mind. I want all of you to listen to this point very carefully. He is not the master of his body and mind. It is going to tell us something very significant and important. The importance of self-mastery, that is what we find in Swami Vivekananda's life. We'll come to that point. So we can have 2 types of people. One, a person who is perfectly yukta. The word yukta comes from a person who is a yogi, who is expert in yoga. This yoga brings about self-mastery. So in the absence of this self-mastery, what happens? Krishna says, Nacha yuktasya. He says, 2 things won't be there. He won't be able to meditate, and he will lack wisdom. And Krishna's question is, in the absence of the tendency to meditate and wisdom, spiritual wisdom, the mind will be restless. And in a restless state of mind, how can the man be happy? That is the question. Ashantasya kuta sukham. Now we just look into the human experiences. If we just see the mind of any human being, as we all know, let us be very honest about it. It's in a perpetual state of restlessness. And we are trying to, in and through this restless state of mind, we are trying to make it, or rather we are trying to give to ourselves a little bit of happiness by grabbing things outside. One thing we need to understand here is, there are 2 kinds of experiences. Whatever we have through our psychophysical system, through the sensory system, through the sense organs, the sense organs can give us only pleasures, some pleasurable sensation. It can never give us happiness. Happiness comes from a certain state of mind, which implies a disciplined way of life, which implies the signs of self-mastery. When we have this self-mastery, it is in and through that culture of a certain state of mind we understand what true happiness is. Now let me come to Swami Vivekananda's issue here. Now see, if you just look into this entire world, we can say that there are 2 dimensions to the existence as we are experiencing it. There are 2 dimensions. One is the external dimension and one is the internal dimension. A very broad classification. And when I say that external dimension, I mean to say that even the mind is external. I repeat once again. When I talk about the external dimension of this world or creation or this existence, it is not something outside the body. The mind also is included in that. Mind is also in the external dimension of existence. So the internal dimension is something which is behind the mind or beyond the mind. So we can understand his existence in these two categories. One is the external dimension and one is the internal dimension. Now, we only understand the external dimension as our life is presently going on. We have no idea about the internal dimension. Absolutely no idea about the internal dimension. And in this external dimension, we believe that there is happiness. Adi Shankaracharya, in one of his commentaries, he says, Iha sansare sukhasya gandha matramapi nasti. What does it mean? He says that in this external dimension, there is not one drop of happiness anywhere. Just like what Krishna referred to, this happiness is not something which can come in and through the experiences which we have through our body and the sensory system. Happiness comes from a totally different kind of a spiritual culture where you cultivate a mind of a certain kind which reflects the internal dimension. Then we understand what true happiness is. Now, coming down to Swami Vivekananda, I want to just highlight certain incidents from Vivekananda's life which will tell us the importance of the internal dimension of existence and life. See, most of you, I'm sure you all have read Swami Vivekananda's life because this study circle has been going for last so many years. But some of you are new here in this campus. Though you might have read Swami Vivekananda's life several times, but still there is an importance of revisiting his life again and again. In fact, every time we read the life of some of all these great saints, you will see that we get fresh light, new light every time we read it. What is happening is that person's life is same, but our mind is slowly evolving. I still remember 25, 30 years back when I read Vivekananda's life for the first time. At that time, my state of mind understood his life in a certain way. After 25, 30 years, today when I again look into those incidents, I am seeing a totally different light. What has changed? Not Swami Vivekananda's life. My mind has changed. My mind has evolved. So that is the importance of reading and rereading and revisiting these great personalities, their lives and teachings. You may wonder why every Sunday or every Wednesday you hold the classes every Sunday. And almost every Sunday the topic is same. Even in Kharagpur also I often tell this. We are discussing the same, almost same subjects in a random fashion. But it is not the question of discussing the same subject. In the process, what is happening is that the human mind is evolving. And we are understanding the same subject in deeper and deeper and deeper light. That's the importance of being continuously engaged with this idea of spirituality, which we begin to respond to better and better by constantly being engaged with it. This is a spiritual practice actually. This session is not just to gather some information, but rather I would say that it's a session where you try to evolve spiritually by being engaged with certain core ideas which has to be practiced in life. So that is the importance of reading Vivekananda's life again and again. Now, if you just read Vivekananda's life, today's subject is the message, Vivekananda's message for the youth. All that Vivekananda has said in his complete works is great, epoch-making ideas not only for the Indians but for the entire human race. Everything, the demonstration of those ideas can be found in that person's life itself. Every single event of this person's life depicts, demonstrates, and expresses what he has spoken through words. So rather than expressing his words, if you visit and look into his life, you understand what message he was actually trying to place before the world. So in that sense, I would just highlight certain incidents, some of the incidents from Vivekananda's life, from which we can understand what exactly his life is conveying to the world, better than his own words, and more powerful way. For example, we spoke about the two dimensions of human existence, the external and the internal. Today, in our modern scientific age, we all know what is the thing that we are taught in schools and colleges. This itself is an institute of technology which deals with this physical world. And science as it is today, what does it teach us? It teaches us to evaluate, to examine this concrete world which we are experiencing through our sensory system. And anything beyond this sensory world has got no place in the physical science. Is it not? It has got no place. We have no idea about the internal dimension. That is what I want you to take note of. We are constantly hammered with only one idea, that is this external dimension of this life and existence, which actually is completely possessing the human awareness and consciousness. Presently, the human awareness and consciousness has become the captive of this external world, external objective world. It has become a prisoner of this external world. And that is the reason, why we can't free ourselves from this captivity. And human struggle is basically the struggle to come out of this captivity. Here, no one is free. Just now, as Balaji spoke about happiness, a very basic fundamental idea of happiness is that no human being can be happy with the limited. And everything that we are experiencing in this external dimension, they are all limited and they are all transient. And human soul can never be happy, can never be fulfilled, can never be satisfied with the limited and with the transient. It is an incontrovertible fact, to understand which perhaps we spend an entire lifetime. The earlier we understand this, the better. The human soul can never be happy and fulfilled with the limited and with the transient. We need to go into the dimension of limitlessness. We have fallen into the trap of time from a timeless framework. We spoke about time. What is this time? Time is just a small interval in timelessness. And inside the small framework of time, we are captives. No human soul can be happy here, inside the small framework of time. And he finds his true happiness when he goes into the internal dimension which transcends time, which helps him step into that realm of timelessness. So in Vivekananda's life, you can see every incident which keeps before us that internal dimension in its most blazing and striking manner. Every single incident. I want all of you to remember one point. When next time you read Swami Vivekananda's life, read it from this standpoint. You will see that every single incident of Vivekananda's life is demonstrating the importance of that internal dimension which transcends time, which transcends limitations, which is permanent, which is diametrically opposed to that which we are experiencing here, this framework which is transient, which is destructible, and which is only for a few moments. So just going back to Vivekananda's life, some of the incidents, if we just look into his incidents, this Vivekananda, let us just take some very beautiful incidents from his childhood time. We all know this. Vivekananda was a Dhyana Siddha, a person who was born as an expert, a master of meditation. Again, see, when we talk about meditation, we are dealing with the internal dimension, that dimension which is beyond the mind. So Vivekananda, this Naren, the small boy, he was a Dhyana Siddha, a born expert, a master of meditation. A beautiful incident you will find right in his childhood period. This boy, very restless by nature, but for him, meditation was a matter of play. See, this is a message for the youth to understand the importance of sitting quiet for some time, which is so difficult. Have you ever tried to sit down quietly? Even for 5 minutes, you will understand what a hell of a job that is. It is not an easy job to sit quietly for 5 minutes. It's the most difficult thing in this creation. You may build big buildings, you may scale the Himalayas, but sit down for 10 minutes. You will understand what it means. It's a no joke. Here comes the importance of the internal dimension, which we are unable to access because we have not trained the mind. And without doing that, coming back to the topic of happiness, let us make this point very clear. No soul ever is going to be happy. It is impossible. Just impossible. It's not going to happen. So Vivekananda, as this small boy, Naren, he was a born expert in meditation. So there's an incident when he was small. Once it so happened that any idea this boy would pick up, he would just go deep into it. So Naren, he had heard beautiful stories from his mother's mouth, the stories of Ramayana, the great epic. So having heard this glorifying, the highly glorious figure of Ram, he took this form of Ram so seriously and went so deep into it. Once it so happened that he was lost in meditation on Ram. And it is said that he was meditating on the top floor of his house, and the doors were shut, and he lost himself in deep meditation to such an extent that all the household people, his family members, mothers and other relatives, they couldn't find him anywhere, and they were all looking for him, and nobody knew where this boy is. Actually, he was sitting on the attic there, and he was meditating, completely lost to the external dimension of the life. External dimension is completely left behind. This is a message for us to learn. Two dimensions I am speaking about: the external dimension, the internal dimension. This boy has left behind the external dimension. Can we do that? If we really want to understand what happiness is, we need to attempt once in a while to leave behind the external dimension and try to come and touch, confront that which is inside each one of us. It is waiting for our attention. But we have never paid attention to the internal dimension. Our focus is constantly on what's happening outside. This boy was lost in deep meditation, profound meditation, absolutely no awareness of what's happening outside. And then they had to break open the door, and they were surprised to find this young small boy sitting in deep meditation. The message for the modern world, the modern restless world: to silence the mind, to silence the sound of the mind, the deafening sound of the mind. Sound need not be the physical sound. Mind itself can be very noisy. We want the real silence, the real silencing of the mind, which can come only in the deep meditation. A similar incident happens later on. Once they used to play meditation, he and his friends. But his friends would fail to sit and meditate. But Naren, as a small boy, he would get lost in meditation. Once, similarly, when he was meditating, a poisonous snake came in the room, it is said, and all of the boys, they shouted and they left. And it is said that Naren had absolutely no idea about what was happening. So this is the boy, right from his childhood, a master of his mind, a complete expert in the art of meditation. Now this boy, as he grows up, let me take up some other very important incidents. When he grew up to be a young man, just like any one of you here, after having gone through his school education, college education, where he was introduced to all the great philosophies of the different areas: Western philosophy, Indian philosophy, Western psychology, history, and all the different streams of knowledge he was introduced to. And he was a master of all of that. And at that time, I'm talking about a stage in human life where a person begins to confront the problem of conflicts, serious conflicts between ideologies. Now, as a young man, this Naren, having been introduced to all these Western ideas which deals with this physical world, modern science, and on the other side, this boy, whatever he heard from his mother as a small boy, the stories of Ramayana, the stories of Mahabharata, the stories which carry the idea of bhakti, love of God. Now these two ideologies now stood loggerhead with each other, and they created a conflict in his mind. On the one side, the scientific developments which were taking place, which was so exciting, and on the other side, the ideas of spirituality and religion, which talks about the inner dimension, internal dimension. The conflict between our engagement with the internal dimension and the external dimension. Now with this conflict, Naren goes to Sri Ramakrishna. We are coming to a very interesting episode in this person's life. With this conflict, the conflict of internal dimension and external dimension. If we are sensitive about this, this conflict will rage in our minds also. But if you are happy with the external dimension, it is not going to trouble you at all. It's fine. You will be happy with the external dimension. But if you are sensitive to the internal dimension, it is definitely going to create a conflict. Where lies the solution? Who can tell us about the internal dimension? With this conflict, this young boy, goes to Sri Ramakrishna and he poses this question to Sri Ramakrishna, who was a master of internal dimension, who knew nothing but that. It is unbelievable today. We are living in a world of science which talks only about this physical world, whereas that person had no other knowledge other than the knowledge of that which pervades everything, in which the differentiation between internal and external vanishes. One spiritual reality which permeates this entire creation. That was Sri Ramakrishna. So Naren goes and stands in front of Sri Ramakrishna and asks this question. Sir, have you seen God? This is a question about the internal dimension. Being undissatisfied with the external dimension, Naren was asking, have you seen God? I have heard about people talking about God, but who has seen God? Is He really there? Is this internal dimension a fact, or is it really a figment of human imagination? That's the question. This can trouble any one of us. Being engaged with the physical science, this can be a troubling point for any one of us here. Because we are so much trained to think only in one way. It's difficult to really believe that there can be anything which transcends this physical realm. It is with this doubt Naren goes to Sri Ramakrishna and asks this question: does this internal dimension exist, or is it just a figment of human imagination? Sri Ramakrishna says, yes, it exists. I have seen it. I have experienced it. And you also can experience it. If you do as I say, you also can experience it. Now this is an answer which Sri Ramakrishna gave, not only to Naren, it is an answer given to the entire human race to understand the importance of the internal dimension of human existence, of which we have no idea now. How much we may talk about God, God is not just a mere word. It is something which we have to strive for. This is the message. This is the message of Vivekananda and Sri Ramakrishna to the entire human race, to make us understand the importance of the internal dimension, which completely misses from our life. Now, can we turn our attention towards that and try to understand what that is? So from that point onwards, actually Vivekananda's training starts. It's a beautiful, one of the most beautiful chapters in the history of spiritual personalities of all times, where we find one person making the other person come face to face with that internal dimension, the knowledge of which can make our life truly fulfilled, which can make the human soul truly satisfied for all times to come, without which we would never understand what happiness is. We may talk about positive psychology and this psychology and all these modern terms and terminologies, but the matter is as simple as this. This positive psychology, it all has got its rootings somewhere in spirituality. There is no other solution than coming face to face with the spiritual reality which is throbbing in the heart of each one of us. This is what Vivekananda wanted to show to the entire world. Later on, Vivekananda says, my idea can be put into few words. It's a beautiful utterance. He says, my idea can be put into few words to preach unto humanity their divinity and how to make that divinity manifest in every moment of their lives. That's his sole message. The message of the internal dimension of human existence. My idea is that alone. How to make everyone understand the importance of this internal dimension and how to make that internal dimension manifest in every step, in every moment of human life, in every engagement with this external world. We can do it constantly being aware of this great infinite dimension throbbing in each one of us. So after that incident, Vivekananda's training starts. Let me just narrate two more incidents relating to this. Then I want to take the other dimension of Vivekananda's life. In the first meeting with Sri Ramakrishna, this wonderful interaction and the beautiful dialogues take place, and Naren is totally, he's confused. He couldn't understand what this man is saying. And many things happened there. I'm not going into the details of that. But one thing Naren understood. He says that, Naren says, I have never found anyone so pure and so holy in my life. This man of perfect renunciation. I have never seen any personality like this. Whether what he speaks is true or false, God knows. Naren didn't believe his words. It's difficult to believe into the internal dimension. That's why I'm saying we need to constantly hammer this idea. That is why every Sunday class, you don't think that the same subject is being repeated. This repetition is needed because it's very difficult to have full conviction about this internal dimension, because this external dimension is so strongly possessing the human awareness, it doesn't let us have even the slightest glimpse of what is lying behind this mind. That is why we need to revisit this idea again and again, so that we slowly drift from this. Our awareness slowly learns to disassociate itself from the external dimension and begin to move closer and closer to what lies inside. Then we understand what is the journey towards true happiness. The pursuit of happiness should be in this direction, not in the opposite direction. So, the next incident is the second time visit when Naren comes to Sri Ramakrishna. In that event, it's a beautiful event. Naren is coming to Dakshineshwar. Those who have gone to Calcutta, please visit Dakshineshwar. It's a beautiful place where this great drama of the modern times had taken place. And you can visualize what had happened there at that time. It's so lively. Even today, if you just go, it may seem that it had happened just the other day. The Dakshineshwar Kali temple there. So Naren goes to Sri Ramakrishna the second time, and again, on that day, Sri Ramakrishna, this illiterate Brahmin, absolutely. Now see, Sri Ramakrishna has he doesn't know anything about the modern science, which you all are so much busy with. He didn't study in any technical institution. He didn't study modern science, all these things. But see the power that manifests through this person. Sri Ramakrishna very softly, in the course of his conversation with Naren, he touches her. And instantly, Naren begins to drift from the external consciousness, from his awareness of the external dimension to the internal dimension. Somebody can make this possible. It's unbelievable. He sees that the entire world is whirling round and round, and it is disappearing into a void. The importance of the internal dimension, about which we have no idea. The entire external dimension is just as if it is melting into a void, and Naren shouts, "What are you doing, sir? What are you doing?" Naren gets scared. So that is the kind of engagement we have with the external dimension. The moment it begins to go away from our grip, we are scared. We don't want to leave it. We are holding it. We are holding this external dimension, and that's why we have absolutely no idea about what lies inside. So when this was happening, Naren shouted and said, "What are you doing, sir?" And then Sri Ramakrishna withdrew and said, Okay, it will happen later. Now you're not ready for it. It will happen later. This is the second incident. The importance of the internal dimension of human existence. Third visit, also the same thing happens. It's very interesting. There also we find the same thing. The importance of the internal dimension. I'm not going into the details of that. Now, one more incident, and then I'll switch to the other dimension of Swami Vivekananda's life. Now, this incident is one of the very important, significant incidents of the training period of Naren under the tutelage of Sri Ramakrishna. Naren didn't believe in Advaita. You know what is Advaita? Advaita, now again we are going into the internal dimensions in its climax, in its highest flights. We can't even imagine that. It's not a matter of imagination. So Advaita means there is only one reality. It is not one reality, it is non-dual reality. It can't be said to be one, because if one is there, then two is there. In that reality, it is non-dual. It is put it in that term. Because if you talk about one, then two is there. So here the experience is the experience of non-duality, where there is no duality. That means the duality which we are seeing in this external existence doesn't exist there. That is the ultimate dimension of human existence, and which is known to be Sat Chit Anandam. Again, coming back to happiness, where is this Anandam? Sukham? Not anywhere in the external dimension, but in the Sat Chit Anandam, which is throbbing inside the heart of each one of us. Now, Naren didn't believe in this. I now today am in the Advaita Ashram, for your information, which was the great vision of Swami Vivekananda. Vivekananda is the only spiritual teacher in the entire history who envisaged an ashram fully dedicated to the practice of non-dualism. Even the greatest Advaitic teacher, Adi Shankaracharya, didn't envisage such a thing. What a wonderful thing it is. Even Adi Shankaracharya, whatever all the mathas which he established, in all those mathas, the worship of the Divine Mother takes place. It was Vivekananda, it was given to Vivekananda alone to think about a place where there won't be any external rituals, no dependence on forms, no dependence on any external ceremonies, but the pure meditation on the non-dual reality, Advaita. Interestingly, this Vivekananda who had established this Advaita Ashram, there was a time in his life where he absolutely shunned the idea of Advaita. It's a very interesting episode. He didn't believe in Advaita, that such a thing can ever exist. Now, at this juncture of his life, Sri Ramakrishna has been trying again and again to make Naren understand this Advaitic reality. But Naren was not ready to accept it at any cost. So one day what happened when Naren was making fun of Advaita? According to Advaita, everything is God. The table is God, the chair is God, human beings are God, everything is God. So Naren was making fun. You see, he is saying that everything is God, this table is God, this jug is God, this cup is God. How absurd, how nonsense. The people who have written such books, they must be truly mad people. This is what he expressed. And Sri Ramakrishna was listening to all this from behind. It's a very interesting event. Naren was talking to his friend Hazra, and he was passing such a remark saying that, you see, what an absurd idea it is that everything is God. This is the problem of the conflict between the external dimension and the internal dimension. We can't believe that it's one reality seen in so many forms. And in that state, Sri Ramakrishna comes from behind and slowly touches him. Naren, what are you seeing? What are you saying, Naren? And saying so, Sri Ramakrishna comes and touches him from behind, and instantly Naren is lost in the experience of that reality. For the first time, Naren experiences what the Upanishad is talking about. For the first time, Naren experiences non-dual experience. The first time, Naren understands what lies inside or behind mind. The importance of the internal dimension of human life. This is a message, friends. This is a message given to us through the life, not through words. His life is telling us, see the demonstration of the internal dimension of life, without knowing which no human being can ever be happy and fulfilled. The first time he experiences non-duality, and that experience lingers for several days. Naren himself, then he reiterates his experience, and he says that for several days he would see everything as one. He had completely lost the differentiation between me and you. And even when he would sit down to have his meals in his house, and his mother would be serving food to him, he would be not in a position to eat, because the differentiation between me, the eater, and the food which is eaten is lost. It's a totally different dimension of human existence, of which we have absolutely no idea. His life is teaching us, giving us the greatest message to the modern race, steeped in scientific idea, which believes only in the external dimension. It tells us the importance of what lies behind the sensory world which we are experiencing. This is the message of divinity, and how to manifest it in every moment of human life. Now I stop here. As far as the internal dimension is concerned, let me come down to the other side of Vivekananda's life. Now, what is the repercussion of this experience? You may ask, if somebody has got the experience of this internal dimension, how is it going to find expression in human life? Has it got some utility? We are all utilitarians. We don't consider anything to be important unless it gives us something. If it doesn't give us something, it is of no value. Certain thing has got some utility if it means something to me, if it is giving something to me. So we are all great utilitarians. So the natural question comes, what is the utility of this kind of an experience? The first thing is that the man becomes completely fulfilled. Second thing is, the expression of this great knowledge is something revolutionary as far as every human being is concerned. What happens? What kind of expression does this great experience take to? That person now becomes one with everybody. That person becomes one with everybody's sufferings. That person becomes one with everybody's happiness. That person becomes one with the creation itself. This is a revolution. Do we have any idea about this kind of a evolution of man? We are presently, as we are existing today, we are concerned only about ourselves, me and mine. What happens to me? What happens to my career? What happens to my marks? A few marks here and there, up and down, means we're gone. Sometimes, unfortunately, it's a serious matter. We find youngsters committing suicides. Yes, young, budding lives committing suicides. Why? Because we haven't understand the importance of this internal dimension of human life and how greatly it can express on the external front. Now that dimension, that story now starts. This Vivekananda, after the passing away of his Guru Sri Ramakrishna, he goes throughout the length and breadth of this great land, India, Bharat. He walks the length and breadth of this country, and he comes in touch with the very soul of this country. For the first time, he had directly experienced what Bharat is, what India is, what India stands for. He mixed with the poorest of the poor person of this land, and he also lived with the richest Rajas and Maharajas of that time. And in the course of his peregrination, after leaving Kolkata, he went to the northern states, in those times the princely states, and after having gone to the northern India, the northwestern India, coming down to the western states, and finally he comes and lands up very close to this very Chennai city, not very far away from here, to that great place called Kanyakumari, the southernmost tip of this country. And you all know about that great incident. Vivekananda sat on the famous Vivekananda rock for 3 days and 3 nights. You all know the story very well. For 3 days and 3 nights, this sannyasi was meditating there. And you know what was the objective of his meditation? There is something which really should rouse a new kind of a passion in all of us. We are talking about Vivekananda's message to the youth. What was Vivekananda meditating upon? The sannyasi. What is the sannyasi supposed to meditate upon? The sannyasi has got no other object of meditation apart from God. Sannyasi's only object is God. What else? Sannyasi has got no other engagement. The sannyasi is supposed to meditate upon God. But here was an unusual kind of a sannyasi who for 3 days and 3 nights he was not meditating upon God. He was meditating upon his motherland, India. The second dimension of his life, which gives a great message to the younger generation today, and which comes from a deep experience of the internal dimension of human existence. So what was his topic of meditation there? For 3 days and 3 nights, Vivekananda was just looking at this great land, steeped in poverty. And his heart was literally bleeding. Literally bleeding. He was in tears, seeing his 30 crore. At that time, the population of India was around 30 crore, 29 crore or something like that. 29, 30 crore of his own brothers and sisters steeped in poverty and squalor, with no food to eat, even once a day. That was the condition of India of his times. And he was simply wondering, what can he do for his motherland? The passion. In Vivekananda, we find 2 things combined. We should understand this point. When we are talking about this personality, you will find 2 things perfectly blending in this personality. Intense pride blended with intense pain. That is Vivekananda. Pride about what? Pride about the glorious culture of this great land, India. Tremendous pride. His chest is to throb with that pride, sense of pride, thinking about what this great land has been for ages. For ages, this country has been the master, or rather the leader for the entire world, the richest country in the world, having come down to this plight, where 30 crore people are languishing in poverty and squalor. Pride combined with pain, that is Vivekananda. Today, our younger generation has to imbibe this combined emotions in their hearts. If you really want to do something for this country, you should have these two emotions combined, because Vivekananda's India and today's India, though we have gone far ahead from his times, and yet today also we have great challenges and we have much to do. And we need this kind of a passion which Vivekananda expressed and demonstrated in his life. A combination of pride and pain. And just imagine, friends, really, even now, as I said in the beginning, we have to visit and revisit this life, and every time when you reread this life, you will be simply stunned. How can one person dare to think that I will change the destiny of this land, I will go to the foreign country, I will go to America, and I will bring money from there, and I will do something for my people. Can we even imagine such thoughts coming into our minds when you see poverty in this country anywhere? This is the kind of passion which we can rouse in our hearts when we visit Vivekananda's life. This one person alone daring to think that I will do. A penniless monk. He was not a business magnate, not a single penny in his pocket. And he is thinking that he is going to change the destiny of this land by going to the West, bringing money from there and investing that money and doing something for the welfare of his own brothers and sisters. Passion. Why? A sense of oneness with everybody which comes from the internal dimension. So this is the kind of you see the relationship, what happens when we come in touch with the internal dimension, you begin to permeate the entire external dimension in a different way. Today you find yourself separated from everybody, but more you have the experience of the internal dimension, you will find yourself permeating every single constituent of this external dimension. And then this kind of a passion comes. Let me do something for others who are suffering. So from there we know what happened to his story. This man, from this very great city of Chennai, all the devotees of Chennai, such a wonderful, so touching episode of his life, how they helped Swamiji to go to America, and he went there and he started his American work. And what happened in Chicago, it's a different thing. That's a totally independent subject. We can some other time discuss about the glory of this great Chicago address, which we are actually celebrating now. The last 2 years we have been celebrating the 125th anniversary of Swamiji's Chicago speech. So that celebration is still going on. So the importance of Chicago address is something very important for all of us. There also it is filled with a very important message for the entire human race. So Vivekananda started his Western American work there, and sitting there he began to organize the Indian people, to make them united, to give them a sense of unity, to make them love their motherland, to make them dedicate their lives for the welfare of their own brothers and sisters. This is a passion of a different kind, a passion for dying for others, not simply theorizing anything, but the readiness to step out and do something for others. This is the great message which we get from Vivekananda's life, as I said in the beginning. And then, of course, the Ramakrishna Mission was started. And this Ramakrishna Mission, for the last 100 years, it has been all these works which are going on. If you go and see in the Mylapore Mutt what's going on there, we just saw the video of Mayur, what's happening there in Mayur, all those things. It's just the expression, or rather I should say, it is all born from a great mind called Vivekananda. The activity has been initiated from that great ocean-like mind which actually has made this possible, this great, and of which we are all small ingredients and parts. So if we can do something, even in a small way, our lives can become blessed. And that is why actually I want all the youngsters to understand this point. When you attend this Vivekananda study circle, remember, his life is the greatest message, more than his words. His words itself are electrifying. We know every single sentence is packed with so much of power and energy that it can transform lives. We are all the products of such words, and each one of you. But if you look into his life, you find the demonstration of what he has spoken. That is Vivekananda's life and the importance of it. The message is simply clear to all of us, to the entire human race, that to preach unto humanity their divinity, to preach unto humanity the importance of the internal dimension and how to make this divinity, how to make this internal dimension manifest in every moment of human life. This is the central message of Vivekananda's life and his teachings. And based upon this, Vivekananda wanted to give a new civilization to the entire world. Look at his vision. It's beyond human comprehension, truly speaking. We can't comprehend. How can a man think so vast? He was thinking to give a new civilization to the entire human race. Yes, these are his words. In London, he says, I have just started my work. In America, I have just raised 1 or 2 waves. In America, he is saying, I have just raised 1 or 2 waves. We have to raise a tidal wave. The society has to be turned upside down. The world has to be given a new civilization. Electrifying words. It is a duty which he keeps before all the youngsters of his country. This duty is the duty of our youngsters. This work has to be accomplished by India and India alone. This was his vision. He wanted India to conquer the entire world once again by the Indian spiritual and philosophical thought. He says, we have no other alternative. Either we do it or we die. These are his words. India has to once again conquer the world with her spiritual and philosophical thought. She has to do it. There is no other alternative. If she doesn't do it, she will die. These are his words. And who is going to do this? He had put the whole onus on the youngsters of this country. So this is basically Vivekananda's message to the entire human race, both in the Indian context as well as the Western context, which we Indians today, the present generation, unfortunately, I often feel that Vivekananda is not being taught in our schools and colleges. How sad even now. We have the best brains, the best race. There's such potentialities. Actually, the strength is hidden. Only it has to be brought out. And there can be no better catalyst than this great personality called Vivekananda. So I thank all of you, dear friends. I thank the Vivekananda Study Circle for having given me this great opportunity to come and share these ideas with all of you. What I often remind all my friends wherever I go, that each one of you need to take this onus on your shoulders to see that wherever you go, you too have to do the job of spreading these ideas. For that you yourself have to be well acquainted with Vivekananda's ideas. I request all of you to read one book, all youngsters, and that book is Lectures from Colombo to Almora. And there are 4 or 5 important lectures in that, which every Indian, every youngster must read. It's a must read. You can note it down if you want. These 4 or 5 lectures, which you will find in Lectures from Colombo to Almora, these speeches are: My Plan of Campaign, The Work Before Us, The Future of India, The Sages of India, and Vedanta in its application in everyday life. These 5 lectures, every young boy and girl of this country should read if you really want to do something for this motherland. It will ignite your hidden passions. Thank you so much.